The day Karen told my daughter she would never be good enough to sing, I remembered the sound that followed. Not my daughter's voice, but the sound of her tiny heart breaking. This memory still shakes me, even today. It sits heavy in my chest, like a stone I can't put down. My daughter was only 9 years old, and her voice was soft, gentle, and full of dreams. She wasn't perfect, but she was trying, and every note she sang came from a place of innocence and hope. Yet that day, one harsh sentence from our HOA Karen destroyed her confidence in an instant. I still remember the morning clearly. The sun was warm, the birds were singing, and my daughter was practicing on our porch, humming the same melody she had been learning all week. She wasn't loud, she wasn't disturbing anyone, and she wasn't doing anything wrong. But some people don't need a reason to be cruel. Some people look at joy and feel threatened. And Karen, well, she was one of those people. She stood at the center of the neighborhood with her rule book, her clipboard, and her heart as stiff as the pages she carried. When she walked up to my daughter, she didn't smile. She didn't soften her voice. She didn't even act like she was talking to a child. She looked down at her with cold eyes and said, "You should stop singing. It's annoying. And honestly, you're not very good." My daughter froze. Her lips trembled. Her little hands shook, and her eyes filled with tears she fought hard to hide. I wanted to step in. I wanted to defend her. But by the time I walked out the door, Karen had already turned her back and walked away, leaving my daughter standing there, crushed and silent. That day changed something inside her. She stopped singing. She stopped humming. She didn't even speak much. It was as if Karen had taken away something precious, her light, her joy, her confidence. For weeks our home felt quieter. No sweet tunes in the morning, no soft humming at night, just silence, cold and heavy. And every time I looked at my daughter, I saw that silence sitting on her shoulders, like a weight too big for her to carry. I tried to comfort her, but pain, especially the kind delivered by cruelty, doesn't disappear overnight. It lingers. It grows roots. And for children, those roots grow even deeper. But life has a strange way of turning heartbreak into power. And sometimes the people who try to break you end up becoming the reason you rise even stronger. That's exactly what happened to my daughter. One afternoon, when she thought no one was listening, she started singing again. Her voice was shaky, soft, unsure, but it was there, alive, breathing, trying. I stood outside her room, tears in my eyes, listening as she pushed through the fear Karen had planted in her heart. Every note sounded like courage. Every breath sounded like a fight. And in that moment, I realized something important. My daughter wasn't giving up. I enrolled her in singing lessons. I encouraged her. I sat through every practice, every rehearsal, every little moment where she learned to trust her voice again. And slowly, the confidence returned. Not the same as before, but stronger, deeper, rooted in resilience. A year later, she joined a local talent show. She was nervous, but she walked on stage with her head high. And when she opened her mouth and sang, the entire hall went silent. Her voice didn't sound like a child anymore. It sounded like someone who had been broken and rebuilt herself, someone who had learned to turn pain into power. The judges stood, the crowd cheered, and my daughter, she smiled again. From that day on, her journey never stopped. Contest after contest, show after show, small stages, big stages, and eventually, national television. The world saw what Karen couldn't. A star. Today, my daughter is a celebrity. Her voice is known. Her performances are loved. Her talent is celebrated. And every time I watch her on stage, my heart whispers the same words.
She sings the loudest because someone once tried to silence her. Now here's the twist. The same Karen who once mocked my daughter now brags to the neighborhood. I knew her when she lived here, as if she helped her rise, as if she ever believed in her, as if she ever loved her voice. But we remember the truth. We remember the tears. We remember the pain. And we remember the day she tried to break a child's dream. And yet, my daughter doesn't hate her. Because without Karen's cruelty, my daughter might never have discovered her strength. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most become the reason you shine the brightest.
When a child loses their voice, the world doesn't go silent. The world becomes heavier. That is what I learned in the months after Karen mocked my daughter. Her silence wasn't quiet. It echoed through every corner of our home. It lingered in places where her laughter once lived. It followed us in car rides, sat with us at dinner, and walked beside us during evening strolls. Silence can be louder than any noise, especially when it belongs to someone you love. My daughter used to sing everywhere. In the kitchen while I cooked, in the car while we drove to school, even in grocery store aisles when she thought no one was listening. Her voice was part of our routine, part of our memories, part of who she was. And suddenly, it was gone. I could see the fear in her eyes every time she opened her mouth to speak, let alone sing. It was the fear of being judged again, the fear of being told her voice didn't matter, the fear of being told she wasn't good enough. And no child should ever carry that kind of fear. But here's the truth. Most people don't realize how deeply a single sentence can wound a child. Most people don't realize how fragile a young heart can be. Most people don't understand that words don't just disappear. They stay. They repeat. They echo. And Karen, she didn't understand any of that. Weeks passed, and my daughter remained quieter than ever. I tried different things, talking to her, taking her out, distracting her, but nothing worked. Then one evening, while cleaning her room, I found a small notebook under her pillow. Inside, she had written 3 heartbreaking sentences. I want to sing. I'm scared to sing. Maybe Karen was right. I sat on her bed and cried. Not because of Karen, but because of the doubt she had planted inside my daughter. A doubt that had started growing roots. And roots like those grow fast. They tighten. They suffocate. They convince a child to shrink emotionally and mentally. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would not let someone else's cruelty define my daughter's future. So I took a gentle approach. I didn't force her to sing. I didn't bring it up constantly. Instead, I surrounded her with music again, softly, slowly, like reintroducing sunlight to someone who had been living in the dark. I played her favorite songs during breakfast. I hummed quietly while doing chores. I sang off-key on purpose to make her laugh. And little by little, her smile started returning. And one afternoon, while I was folding laundry, I heard something faint, something soft, shaky, almost like a whisper. It was my daughter humming in the next room. Just a few notes. Just a tiny sign of hope. But it was enough to bring tears to my eyes. It was the first step. The first crack in the wall of fear. The first hint that her voice still lived inside her. I didn't disturb her. I didn't walk in. I just listened, letting her voice fill the spaces that had been empty for too long. From that day, I encouraged her gently. Not with pressure, not with expectations. Just love. I bought her a small karaoke mic. I signed her up for singing lessons. Casual ones, nothing intense. I told her stories of famous singers who faced rejection. I played interviews of people who turned their pain into power. And over the months, something magical happened. Her voice returned. Not suddenly, not perfectly, but steadily. It grew from a whisper to a hum, and from a hum to a soft song. And then one day, she sang a full chorus, and I felt like the sun had risen inside our home again. But this story isn't just about her voice returning. It's about the strength she discovered inside herself, a strength she didn't even know she had. One evening, as we sat on the porch, she looked up at me and asked, "Dad, do you think I can ever be really good at singing?" I held her hand and said, "You already are good. But if you want to be great, then yes, you can be. And I'll be with you every step of the way." That night, she practiced for hours. Not because someone forced her, but because she wanted to. And that's the moment I realized my daughter wasn't just singing again. She was healing. Months passed, her confidence grew, and her teacher suggested she join a small talent show. She hesitated at first, but something inside her had changed. She wasn't the same scared little girl anymore. She said, "Maybe I should try. Maybe I want people to hear me." And so she did. The night of the talent show, she stepped on stage wearing a simple dress and holding her mic with both hands. Her feet trembled, her voice shook, but the moment she started singing, the entire room went silent. Not the painful kind of silence, but the awestruck kind. Her voice was pure. It was emotional. It carried pain, courage, and hope all at once. She didn't sound like a child trying to escape fear. She sounded like someone who had survived it. People in the audience cried. The judges smiled. And when she finished, the applause was loud enough to shake the walls. That night changed her life. But more importantly, it changed her belief about herself. She didn't become a celebrity overnight, but that night planted a new seed, the right kind. A seed of confidence, a seed of strength, a seed of destiny. And as her journey grew, so did the pride in my heart. But even in her early success, one question remained in my mind. What would Karen say now if she heard my daughter sing? Little did I know, Karen would return to our lives soon, and that moment would be sweeter than any applause.
Success has a strange way of circling back to the very people who once doubted you. And in our case, that circle led straight back to Karen, the same woman who said my daughter would never be good enough to sing. But before that moment came, my daughter's journey grew bigger, brighter, and more magical than any of us had imagined. After her first talent show, something inside her awakened. It was like someone had lit a small flame in her chest, and day by day, that flame began to glow brighter. She practiced daily. She learned new songs. She started understanding music with a deeper emotion, the kind that comes only from pain and healing. Her singing teacher told me one day, "She has something special, something you can't teach." And I already knew that. I had always known that. Even when she was humming as a toddler, there was a softness and purity in her voice that felt like home. But now, her voice wasn't just sweet. It had strength. It had truth. It had a story. And stories, when sung with heart, reach places that spoken words never can. Slowly, she started auditioning for bigger shows. She didn't win them all. She faced rejection. She cried some nights, but she never stopped trying. Every no only made her more determined. Every failure made her stronger. Every challenge shaped her voice, not just musically, but emotionally. One day, she stood in front of me and said, "Dad, I want to try for the regional show." It was the biggest platform she had ever aimed for. Hundreds of participants, professional judges, thousands of viewers. I saw fear in her eyes, But behind that fear was courage. The courage of a child who had once been broken and rebuilt herself. So I said the words every child deserves to hear. I believe in you. She auditioned. She sang with her whole heart, and she moved the judges to tears. She didn't just get accepted, she got the highest score in the auditions. From there, everything started moving fast. She received training, she performed with other talented kids, she learned how to handle pressure, how to deal with nerves, how to express emotions through every note she sang. And when the day of the regional finals came, she walked on stage with confidence I had never seen before. She looked calm, elegant, and surprisingly mature for her age. Even before she opened her mouth, people could feel something powerful about her presence. When the music started, the entire hall went silent. Her voice wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was honest. Every note was filled with emotion, the kind of emotion you don't learn in classes, the kind that life teaches you. She sang from her heart, and her heart spoke through her melody. Some audience members cried openly. Some held their chest. Some closed their eyes just to feel her voice more deeply. And when she finished, everyone stood. The applause was like thunder. The judges couldn't stop smiling. And in that moment, I knew. She had finally found her place in the world. She won. And from that victory, her journey took a new turn. The turn toward fame. News channels started interviewing her. Local newspapers wrote about her. People recognized her in stores. Teachers asked her to sing at events. And she handled it all with grace, humility, and kindness. But fame doesn't just attract love. It also attracts curiosity, jealousy, and occasionally, those who once underestimated you. One Saturday afternoon during a community event, I saw someone standing near the crowd with crossed arms and a narrowed gaze. Karen. The same Karen who once mocked my daughter. The same Karen who told her she wasn't good enough. The same Karen who crushed her confidence years ago. But now, she looked different. Not confident, not strict, not superior. She looked shocked, frozen, almost embarrassed. She stared at my daughter like she was looking at a ghost from her past, a reminder of a mistake she wished she hadn't made. My daughter walked onto the stage that day with a smile. She greeted the audience politely, and she began singing her newest song, the one she wrote about overcoming fear and finding courage. And guess where she was looking? Right at Karen. Not with hatred, not with anger, with grace. Her voice was calm and strong. Every line carried power. Every note carried truth. And as she sang, I saw something unbelievable. I saw tears in Karen's eyes. She looked down. She wiped her face. She folded her arms tighter. She exhaled deeply, as if the song was forcing her to face her own guilt. It was a moment I will never forget. The moment a woman who once tried to break a child now stood powerless in front of that child's strength. When the performance ended, people clapped loudly. My daughter smiled, bowed, and walked backstage. And as she passed Karen, something unexpected happened. Karen whispered, "I was wrong." My daughter didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her success had already spoken for her. But later, when we got home, she looked at me and said, "Dad, I don't hate her. I just hope she realizes words matter." And I knew then, my daughter wasn't just talented. She was wise. She was kind. She was strong in a way most adults never learned to be. Fame grew. Her opportunities grew. And soon a national show reached out, a chance for her to perform on television. She accepted, and that stage would change everything. Not just for her, but for everyone who had ever doubted her. especially Karen. Because the day my daughter appeared on national television, our entire neighborhood watched. And Karen, she watched from the front row of her living room with regret written all over her face.
Some moments don't just change your life. They change the way the world sees you. And for my daughter, that moment came the day she stepped onto the national television stage. The bright lights, the huge audience, the millions watching from home. It was overwhelming even for adults, but she walked onto that stage with a calmness far beyond her age. I remember holding her hands backstage before her performance. They were warm, not shaking the way they used to. Her eyes were focused, steady, and full of quiet determination. It was almost unbelievable to think this was the same girl who once hid her face in her pillow because Karen's words had crushed her confidence. That day, she wasn't singing to prove anything. She wasn't singing out of fear. She wasn't singing to impress the judges. She was singing because she had finally found her voice, and she was ready to share it with the world. When her name was announced, the crowd cheered. The cameras focused on her tiny frame as she walked into the center of the stage. The music started, soft and gentle, and for a moment everything around her fell silent. And then she sang. Her voice wasn't just beautiful, it was powerful. It was filled with emotion, like it carried every struggle, every tear, every night of doubt she had endured. Her voice told a story, one that reached into people's hearts and held them still. You could see it in the audience. People leaned forward, eyes wide, almost afraid to blink. The judges, who had listened to thousands of voices, looked stunned. The entire room felt frozen, as if the world had paused just to listen to her. But the most unforgettable moment wasn't the applause. It wasn't the cheers. It wasn't the standing ovation. It was the camera panning across the audience and landing on one familiar face. Karen. She was sitting in the live audience right there in the front row, and she was crying. Her shoulders shook, her hand covered her mouth, her eyes glistened under the stage lights. She cried the kind of tears that come from regret, the kind of regret that sits in your heart like a heavy stone. I had no idea she was attending. Maybe she wanted to see if my daughter really had talent. Maybe she wanted closure. Maybe guilt had eaten her up so much that she needed to face the truth herself. But whatever her reason was, one thing was clear. She wasn't prepared for what she heard. Because in that moment, the girl she once called not good enough stood on one of the biggest stages in the country and proved her wrong. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with grace and talent. After the performance, the host came to congratulate my daughter, the judges praised her voice, and the crowd erupted into applause again and again. Backstage, people lined up to meet her, take photos with her, shake her hand, tell her how her voice touched their hearts. But in the middle of all that joy, I saw Karen approaching. She looked smaller than usual, not physically, emotionally. Her confidence was gone, her pride was gone. All that remained was a woman who realized too late how cruel she had been. She stopped in front of us and whispered, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm ashamed of what I did." Her eyes were red, her voice cracked. She looked at my daughter and added, "You're extraordinary, and I hope someday you'll sing without remembering me." My daughter looked at her with maturity far beyond her years. She didn't smile, she didn't frown. She just spoke softly, "I don't sing to forget you. I sing because I learned I don't need your approval." Karen broke down in tears right there. It was the kind of moment that silences a whole room, a moment that teaches you life's biggest lessons, sometimes from the smallest voices. After that day, everything changed. Producers reached out, shows invited her. Her clips went viral online. People praised her talent nationwide. She wasn't just a local star anymore. She was becoming a real celebrity. And with every performance, every interview, every new stage she stepped on, her voice grew stronger, richer, more confident. She blossomed into a young artist who inspired millions, especially kids who had been mocked, doubted, or silenced. But fame has its own challenges. People began approaching us in stores.
Neighbors who once ignored us suddenly claimed they always knew she would make it. Events invited her as their special guest. Radio stations played her recordings. And through all of this, she remained humble. Because she remembered where she started. She remembered the fear. She remembered the hurt. She remembered the night she wrote in her notebook, "Maybe Karen was right." But most importantly, she remembered the moment she realized Karen was wrong.
If you've ever been doubted, judged, or silenced, this final part is for you. Keep reading because this ending will heal something inside you. Some apologies come too late, and some truths arrive exactly on time. When the reporters knocked on Karen's door, none of us knew what she would say. Would she lie? Would she deny it? Would she pretend she had always supported my daughter? Or would she finally face the truth she had been running from for years? The camera crew waited. The neighbors watched. And I stood nearby, unable to walk away from the moment I had been imagining for so long. Karen opened her door slowly. Her face looked tired. Her pride looked even more tired. She tried to smile, but it trembled. The reporter asked her gently, "Do you have anything you'd like to say about her journey? You were part of her early life here." Karen swallowed hard. You could see her throat tightening, not from anger this time, but from shame. She looked at the camera, then at the ground, and finally, she whispered the words no one expected. "I wasn't kind to her, and I regret it every day." The neighborhood froze. The crew froze. Even I felt my breath stop. She continued, voice breaking with every sentence. "I didn't realize how deeply my words hurt her. I didn't realize she was just a child. I didn't realize she would grow into someone extraordinary while I stayed stuck as the kind of person who tears others down." Her eyes filled with tears. She held the edge of her door as though her guilt was too heavy to carry. "I can't change what I said," she whispered, "but I'm proud of her. And if she ever watches this, I hope she knows I'm sorry." Those words didn't erase the past, but they revealed something important. Even the hardest hearts can break open when the truth becomes too big to hide. The interview ended. The reporter thanked her. Neighbors exchanged shocked glances. And Karen closed her door, not in anger, but in surrender. The world reacts. When the news story aired, people all over the country fell in love with my daughter's journey. They admired her strength. They praised her patience. They shared their own stories of childhood bullying, broken confidence, and painful words they had carried for years. And millions commented the same line. "She sings like someone who survived something," because she had. She was invited to even bigger shows, award ceremonies, special interviews. She wasn't just a singer now, she was a symbol of hope for kids who felt small, invisible, or unworthy because of someone else's cruelty. One show invited both of us for a sit-down interview. The host asked her, "What would you tell the little girl you once were, the one that stopped singing because someone told her she wasn't good enough?" My daughter smiled softly and said, "I'd tell her that people's opinions aren't the truth. They're just noise, and you get to choose which noise you believe." The entire room applauded. Even I had tears rolling down my face. That moment became one of the most replayed clips online, a message of strength from a child who had learned to rebuild herself. The most unexpected moment. Months later, during a charity concert in our own community, my daughter was invited to perform as the closing act. The whole neighborhood came out. Parents, kids, friends, and even people from other towns who had watched her grow. As she walked onto the stage, the lights shone on her, and the crowd cheered louder than ever. And then I saw her, Karen, standing at the back, hands tightly folded, eyes already wet, not trying to be seen, just trying to be present. My daughter started singing a song she wrote herself, titled
The voice inside. It was about fear. It was about healing. It was about reclaiming the voice she once lost. She sang with her whole heart, and when she reached the final line, "I sing now because I know who I am," the entire audience stood up. People clapped, people cried, people hugged each other. And Karen? She covered her mouth and sobbed, not out of guilt anymore, but from something deeper. Realization. Realization that she had failed to break my daughter. Realization that the child she once mocked had a voice stronger than her own judgment. Realization that kindness is remembered longer than cruelty, and she had chosen the wrong side of that memory. When the concert ended, Karen didn't approach us. She didn't try to force forgiveness. She simply stood there watching my daughter, knowing she had learned her lesson too late. But my daughter, with a heart far bigger than her years, walked towards her slowly. Karen broke down again. She could barely speak. But my daughter didn't need words. She simply hugged her. A soft, gentle hug, not for Karen's sake, but for her own healing. Because forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about freeing your future. Today, my daughter is loved across the country. Her voice inspires millions. Her story heals hearts. Her courage speaks louder than any insult ever spoken to her. But whenever she performs, whenever she gives an interview, whenever she signs an autograph, she always says one powerful line. If someone tries to silence you, sing louder.
People stay silent for years until someone's child is hurt. And that day, our neighborhood finally woke up. When Karen mocked my daughter, it wasn't just a small insult. It was a moment that exposed how many people she had hurt. I started receiving quiet knocks on my door, gentle voices, older neighbors, people who had lived on that street for 30 or 40 years. They said, "We saw what happened, and we are tired of her behavior." For the first time, I felt supported. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Parker, held my hand with her wrinkled fingers and said, "Your little girl sings like sunshine, dear. Don't let that woman dim her light." Her words touched me deeply. My daughter stood behind me, listening, and her eyes softened. She was feeling something she never expected. Acceptance. Slowly, more neighbors joined. A retired military man, a grandmother raising her grandson, a couple who had lived here since the 70s. They all said the same thing. HOA Karen has gone too far. For the first time, I felt the community becoming stronger than the complaints, stronger than the rules, stronger than her bitterness. But Karen didn't stop. She sent another letter, then another, each one more aggressive than the last. That evening, I sat with my daughter on the porch. She asked in a soft voice, "Dad, why does she hate my singing so much?" I held her close. "Sweetheart, people who lose their joy can't understand people who still have it." She nodded quietly. She understood more than a child should. And that night I decided I would not let Karen break her spirit. Not today, not ever. Section 7. Karen's last attempt and the day everything changed. Some people only learn when life forces them to face the truth. And that day arrived for Karen. She marched toward my house early in the morning, HOA papers in hand, ready to deliver one final threat. Her walk was angry. Her face was tense. The whole neighborhood could feel her storm coming. But something unexpected happened. As she stepped onto my driveway, a car pulled up. A journalist stepped out. A camera crew followed. They weren't here for Karen. They weren't here for me. They were here for my daughter. Her singing video had gone viral overnight. Millions of views, thousands of comments, people calling her the little girl with the golden voice. The reporter smiled warmly and said, "We're here to interview your daughter for her rising career." Karen froze. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes widened with disbelief. My daughter walked out shyly, holding her small microphone. But this time, she wasn't afraid. She stood tall. She smiled. She looked confident. The reporter asked her to sing a few lines. She did, and her voice filled the quiet morning air like a soft melody floating through sunlight. The neighbors stepped outside and listened. Some wiped tears. Some smiled proudly. Some whispered, "Bless her soul." Karen stood there, powerless, watching the girl she mocked become everything she could never stop. When the interview ended, the reporter looked at Karen and asked, "Ma'am, were you the neighbor who filed the noise complaints?" Her face turned pale. The entire community looked at her, not with anger, not with hate, but with disappointment. That was the day she lost her power, not because of rules, not because of paperwork, but because everyone finally saw the truth. My daughter held my hand tightly and whispered, "Dad, I'm not scared anymore." And I smiled, because she had finally won.
Sometimes a child's voice can fix what adults break. And that truth revealed itself in a way none of us expected. The day after the interview, something unusual happened. Our neighborhood felt quieter. Not the angry kind of quiet Karen always demanded, but a peaceful quiet, a healing quiet. People were smiling more. They waved at each other. They spoke kindly. It felt like the street finally remembered what community truly meant. That evening, an elderly couple knocked on my door. They said, "Would your daughter sing for us? Just one song. It's been years since we heard anything so beautiful." My daughter looked at me nervously. I nodded gently. She stepped outside with her little toy microphone. The neighborhood gathered slowly. Grandparents, retired teachers, old friends who barely talked before, families who lived here for decades. They all stood together, in peace, waiting. My daughter cleared her throat softly. Then she began to sing. Her voice floated through the air like a warm breeze. Soft, gentle, pure. Some neighbors closed their eyes. Some placed hands over their hearts. Some wiped quiet tears. Even old Mr. Thompson, the grumpiest man on our street, whispered, "Lord, that child is a blessing." And for a moment, we were all connected. Every age, every home, every heart. But then, something unexpected happened. Karen came outside. Everyone stiffened. The mood shifted. People waited for her usual anger, her shouting, her complaints. But Karen didn't yell. She didn't wave papers. She didn't mock anyone. She stood still, her arms lowered, her face soft, her eyes strangely emotional. My daughter kept singing, and Karen didn't move. Not an inch. She just listened. For the very first time, she wasn't angry. She wasn't loud. She wasn't controlling. She was silent. Completely silent. When my daughter finished, the entire street clapped softly. Karen didn't clap, but she didn't complain either. She simply turned around and walked back inside her house. That night, my daughter asked, "Dad, did Karen like the song?" I smiled gently and said, "Sweetheart, Sometimes people don't clap, but deep inside, they still feel something. And my daughter nodded because she understood something bigger than all of us. Even the hardest hearts can change when they hear the right voice.